My skin burned cold as I caught the reflection in the hallway mirror. My mother and brother hunched over my dresser, speaking in hushed tones while carelessly tossing my belongings into black garbage bags. The house was eerily quiet except for the crinkling plastic and my brother Thomas's occasional frustrated sigh. The medical bills, the constant care, it's too much. She's becoming a burden, my mother whispered, unaware I'd wheeled myself down the hall. My throat constricted so tightly I couldn't swallow. Just 3 weeks after the rock climbing accident that had temporarily paralyzed my legs, my own family was disposing of me like yesterday's trash. The titanium wheelchair handles suddenly felt ice cold against my palms. My name is Rachel. I'm 32 and a wilderness survival instructor. This is the story of how I rebuilt my life when the people meant to support me became the ones who tore me down. But Mom, I just need a few months, I pleaded, my voice cracking as Thomas carelessly tossed my framed teaching certificates into a bag. The doctor said, with rehabilitation, "We're not a hospital," she cut me off sharply, not even turning to face me. "Your brother needs the spare room for his home office and we can't keep carrying you up and down the stairs." The irony felt like a knife between my ribs. For years, I'd been the family support system. I'd helped pay for Thomas's college when my parents couldn't afford it, using savings from teaching outdoor survival courses. I'd postponed my own dreams to care for Dad during his heart surgery recovery. Now, 3 weeks after my accident, they couldn't wait to discard me. Thomas never looked at me as he zipped up the last bag. The sound of the zipper might as well have been a door closing on our relationship. "I called Aunt Jessica," Mom announced with plastic cheerfulness. "She has a small guest room. It's not much, but—" "No," I said quietly, pulling out my phone, my fingers trembling slightly, but my voice steadier than I expected. "I'll figure something out." The relief that washed over their faces was unmistakable, like I'd volunteered to clean up a mess they'd made. They couldn't wait to wash their hands of responsibility. What they didn't know was that I had been preparing for this moment. I'd seen the way they looked at me since the accident, like I was damaged goods, a disappointment to their perfect family image. Their sideways glances when I needed help bathing, their sighs when I asked for assistance reaching something, the whispered conversations that stopped when I entered a room. What they also didn't know was that my accident had happened while I was testing a new route for my wilderness survival program. It was the same program that had caught the attention of a major outdoor adventure company 3 months ago. I'd kept the negotiations quiet, not wanting to jinx the deal. "I've called the car service," I said, my voice unnaturally calm even to my own ears. "They'll be here in 20 minutes. "Don't be dramatic, Rachel," Mom sighed, finally turning to look at me. "Where will you go? You can barely take care of yourself." I looked around my childhood room, now stripped bare except for my wheelchair and the bags of hastily packed belongings. 18 years of memories treated like landfill fodder. "I'll manage. I always have." The car service arrived precisely on time. Not the regular taxi they expected, but a specialized vehicle equipped for wheelchair transport. Their surprise at this small sign of competence was almost comical, as if they'd assumed I'd been calling random numbers hoping for rescue. "Rachel," Thomas finally spoke, his voice uncertain as the driver loaded my bags. "Maybe we should discuss this." "You want to discuss it?" I maneuvered toward the door, each push against the wheels releasing a fraction of my rage. "After you've packed my life into garbage bags?" The driver was professionally efficient, helping me into the vehicle while my family stood awkwardly on the porch. Mom kept glancing at the neighbors' houses, probably worried about appearances. Always about appearances. "At least tell us where you're going," she called out, a hint of panic finally breaking through her composed facade. I smiled, thinking of the apartment I'd secretly leased last week, a fully accessible unit in a luxury building downtown. The same building where I'd had my final meeting with the adventure company executives before my accident. "Don't worry about me," I said, as the driver secured my wheelchair. "I'm sure you'll hear all about it soon enough." As we drove away, I caught a last glimpse of their faces in the rearview mirror. They looked confused, maybe even a little worried. They had expected me to break down, to beg, to accept their dismissal of my worth because of my temporary disability. What they didn't realize was that my accident hadn't just changed my body, it had opened my eyes. While lying in that hospital bed, I had finalized the biggest deal of my career. The contract was signed 2 days before they decided to throw me out, Executive Director of Adaptive Wilderness Programs, with a 6-figure salary and complete creative control. My phone buzzed with a message from the company's CEO, Oliver. Everything's set for the announcement next week. The media is excited about our new Adaptive Adventure Program Director. I typed back a quick confirmation, then silenced my phone as messages from Mom started pouring in. They'd have to wait. I had rehabilitation exercises to focus on and a groundbreaking program to launch. Let them think they'd abandon me to struggle. In 3 months, when the program launched and my story hit the media, they'd realize exactly what they'd thrown away. The driver caught my eye in the rearview mirror. "You okay back there, miss?" I smiled, feeling stronger than I had in weeks. Never better. Sometimes being kicked out is exactly the push you need. The driver navigated through downtown traffic until we reached my new building, a sleek high-rise with fully accessible units I'd researched from my hospital bed after Oliver visited me there with the contract. The settlement money from my accident insurance had provided the perfect down payment. 3 months passed faster than I expected. Between intensive physical therapy sessions and virtual meetings with my team, I barely had time to think about my family's betrayal. The luxury apartment became my sanctuary, its accessible design allowing me independence despite my temporary limitations. The rehabilitation center staff were amazed at my progress. "Your determination is remarkable," Dr. Wilson commented during one session as I pushed through another set of exercises. "Most patients take much longer to reach this stage." What she didn't know was that every time my muscles screamed in protest, I pictured my mother's dismissive face. Every time I wanted to quit, I remembered Thomas carelessly tossing my achievements into garbage bags. Pain became my fuel, rejection my motivation. My phone had been quiet for weeks. After the initial flurry of guilty messages from Mom and a few half-hearted texts from Thomas, they'd given up trying to contact me. I heard through Aunt Jessica that they told everyone I was taking time to recover at a special facility. Their way of saving face with neighbors and friends. When my doorbell rang that afternoon, I was surprised to see Natalie standing there. My childhood best friend, who lived next door to my parents, had tracked me down through Aunt Jessica, the only family member I still spoke with occasionally. "You won't believe this," she said, settling onto my couch. "Your mom's been bragging about Thomas's promotion at the country club. Apparently, he's now regional manager at his firm." I wheeled myself to the kitchen, grabbing us both some tea. "Let me guess. They're planning a big celebration." "This Sunday, your mom's invited half the neighborhood." Natalie hesitated. "She's telling everyone you're still too unwell to attend." I couldn't help but laugh. Perfect timing. "What do you mean?" I showed her the press release scheduled for tomorrow morning. Her eyes widened as she read. "Revolutionary Adaptive Adventure Program launches, led by accident survivor Rachel Mitchell." "Rachel?" she gasped. "This is huge. The program, the funding, you're going to be on national news." I nodded, sipping my tea. "Tomorrow morning, every major outdoor and fitness publication will run this story. By Sunday's party, everyone will know exactly why I'm not attending." The next morning, everything exploded. My phone started buzzing at 8 a.m. as the news broke. The story was perfect. Young outdoor educator turns personal tragedy into triumph. Launching first-of-its-kind adaptive adventure program with major industry backing. My inbox flooded with interview requests from magazines and TV shows. Around noon, Aunt Jessica called. "Your mother just saw the news," she said, trying to suppress her glee. "She's having quite the meltdown." "Oh?" I kept my voice neutral. "She was at the salon preparing for Thomas's party when someone showed her the article. Apparently, she knocked over a whole tray of hair products. I was there getting my own hair done and saw the whole thing," Aunt Jessica explained, her voice tinged with satisfaction. I could picture it perfectly. Mom, with her hair half done, trying to maintain composure as her carefully constructed narrative crumbled. The daughter she dismissed as a burden was now making headlines. The messages started pouring in, first from Thomas. "Why didn't you tell us? We could have helped." Then from Mom. Rachel, honey, we need to talk. This is all a misunderstanding. I saved the best one, from Dad, who'd remained silent during my eviction. Your mother's very upset. You should have discussed this with the family first. My response was simple. Like you discussed throwing me out? That evening, as I worked through my therapy exercises in my building's state-of-the-art gym, Natalie texted updates from the neighborhood. Your mom's canceling Sunday's party, claiming she's not feeling well. Everyone knows the real reason, though. The articles all over local Facebook groups. I set down my phone and looked at myself in the gym's mirror. My arms were stronger now, my core more defined from months of rehabilitation. I'd graduated from the wheelchair to crutches last week, though I kept both for different situations. The doctors were amazed by my recovery rate. Your body's response to therapy is exceptional, Dr. Wilson had said during my last assessment. But it's your mental strength that's truly remarkable. She was right. 3 months ago, I left my childhood home broken, not by my accident, but by my family's rejection. Now I was stronger than ever, not despite their actions, but because of them. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Mom. Please, Rachel, let's talk about this as a family. We can fix this. Fix this. As if my success was a problem that needed solving. As if my independence was a family crisis that required management. I wheeled myself to the floor-to-ceiling windows of my apartment, looking out at the city lights. Tomorrow, I would give my first live interview about the program. In a week, we'd start accepting applications from other accident survivors and differently abled adventurers. My story was no longer about being kicked out. It was about where I was going. Let them scramble to explain their actions. Let them try to rewrite history. I had bigger mountains to climb. The next morning, I arrived at the television studio an hour early, my heart racing with anticipation. This interview would be broadcast live across the country, coinciding with what would have been Thomas's celebration party. Instead of hosting the neighborhood at their house, my parents were huddled around their TV watching me on Good Morning America. I sat poised in my sleek wheelchair, a choice I'd made deliberately, though I could now walk with crutches. Sometimes our greatest setbacks reveal our true path, I told the interviewer, my voice clear and confident. This program isn't just about adaptive adventure sports. It's about showing people that limitations are often just invitations to innovate. The segment included footage from my recent trial run, me leading a group of participants in adaptive rock climbing, the very activity that had caused my accident. But now we had specialized equipment, safety protocols, and a team of trained instructors. And your own recovery has been remarkable, the interviewer noted. How did your family's support system help with that? I smiled, ready for this question. Actually, my recovery taught me that sometimes we have to build our own support systems. Not everyone understands that disability doesn't equal inability. The subtle message wasn't lost on viewers. Social media exploded with supportive comments, many sharing their own stories of family rejection during difficult times. After returning to my apartment from the studio, I had barely settled in when security called. Ms. Mitchell, your parents are here requesting access. I'd been expecting this. Send them up. They arrived looking smaller somehow, less intimidating than they had 3 months ago. Mom's perfectly styled hair couldn't hide her nervous fidgeting. Dad's usual commanding presence seemed diminished. Rachel, Mom started, her eyes darting around my expansive apartment. We've been trying to reach you. I know, I replied, gesturing to my comfortable seating area. Please sit. They perched awkwardly on my couch, taking in the adaptive modifications that made the space both accessible and elegant. Through my floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sprawled below us, a view that probably cost more than their entire house. Why didn't you tell us about the program? Dad finally asked, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain. About the contract? I held his gaze steadily. Would it have changed your decision to throw me out? The silence was answer enough. We were worried, Mom tried. We didn't know how to handle the situation. So you decided not handling it at all was the answer? I maneuvered my wheelchair closer. You know what's interesting? When I was in the hospital, before you decided I was a burden, the company's CEO visited me. He said my accident made our program even more valuable. Now I could understand our future participants firsthand. Dad shifted uncomfortably. We're your parents, Rachel. We deserve to know. Like I deserve to know you were planning to kick me out, or did Thomas's need for a home office outweigh my right to recover in my own home? The mention of Thomas made Mom flinch. He's very sorry. The promotion. It's not working out as planned. I couldn't help but laugh. Let me guess. The company saw the news. They're not too happy about a manager who threw his disabled sister out of her home. More uncomfortable silence. Rachel, Mom pleaded. We can fix this. Come home. We'll convert the downstairs study. Make it accessible. I am home, I gestured around my apartment, and I don't need your space anymore. What I needed was your support, and you showed me exactly how much that was worth. Tears welled in Mom's eyes. We made a terrible mistake. Yes, you did, I agreed. But it taught me something valuable. Sometimes the people we expect to lift us up are actually holding us down. I wheeled myself to my desk, picking up some papers. These are applications from people like me, survivors, fighters, people who refuse to be defined by their challenges. That's my family now. Dad stood up, his voice gruff with emotion. What can we do? How can we make this right? I handed them a brochure for the program. You can start by understanding that disability doesn't make someone a burden. These programs will help people rebuild their confidence, their strength, their independence. You're welcome to donate. I paused meaningfully. Anonymously, of course. They left, looking defeated, the brochure clutched in Mom's manicured hands. As the door closed behind them, I felt the last weight of their rejection lift from my shoulders. That day marked the end of our relationship as it had been. I would never again live under their roof or seek their approval. My phone buzzed. Another message from the CEO. Applications flooding in after your interview. You're changing lives, Rachel. I smiled, wheeling myself to the window. Below, I watched my parents exit the building, looking small against the towering architecture. They'd thrown me away when I was at my lowest, never imagining I would soar to such heights. Let them live with that knowledge. Let them explain to their country club friends why they're not part of their daughter's success story. I had mountains to climb, lives to change, and a future to build. Sometimes being kicked out isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of a better one. As for Thomas, I heard through Natalie 6 months later that he'd been passed over for further advancement, his company's HR department quietly sidelining him after his treatment of me became public knowledge. His office, the one he'd so desperately needed my room for, ultimately became a symbol of his stalled career. My doctors now estimate I'll regain about 90% of my previous mobility within the year, but I'll likely always keep a lightweight pair of crutches for longer treks. It's a small price to pay for the purpose I've found. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles. Zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.